I clocked in at midnight. Another shift at St. Jude. Another night of fluorescent lights and echoes of machines beeping in the background. The hospital air, sterile and cold, wrapped itself around me like a reminder I belonged to this place more than any home I'd ever had. The call came in at 12:14 a.m. 2 incoming. High-speed collision. Male, 64. Female, 36. Multiple traumas. I grabbed a chart, still chewing the last bite of my vending machine dinner. Then the names loaded on the screen: Richard Tran. Vivian Tran. My father. My sister. I didn't blink. Years of training held me upright. My fingers clenched the chart, hard enough to feel the laminated edge slice into my palm. "You're not their daughter tonight," I muttered under my breath. "You're the nurse." The trauma team split instantly. I was assigned to Vivian. The surgeon barked orders. We wheeled her in 2 or 3. Her face was bloodied, jaw bruised, femur likely shattered. But she was conscious, barely. And then she whispered, "Cairo, don't leave me." I paused mid-injection. The name echoed in my head like a curse. Cairo. My husband. I stared at her face. Her eyelids fluttered. Maybe it was delirium. Maybe she was calling out to someone else. But not him. Not my Cairo. At the nurse's station, I pulled up hospital logs. Nothing under Cairo Tran. Nothing suggesting he'd even been at the scene. But when I checked Vivian's emergency contact, my breath caught. Primary contact, Cairo Tran. Relationship, partner. No, I said aloud. It had to be a system glitch. A clerical error. Or some grotesque mistake. Have you ever found something so wrong, your brain refused to believe it, just stalled like a screen glitching in disbelief? Would you keep digging? Or would you walk away before the truth ruined everything? I didn't walk away. On my break, I slipped into records, swiped my badge. The system logged me as checking narcotic counts, but that wasn't why I was there. I needed to know. I needed something, anything, to pull me out of this spiraling hell. I found it buried under a stack of inactive cases. My mother's file. Nguyen Tran. Died June 3, 2022. Cause: complications due to cancer. Physician's note: dosage reduced for palliative comfort. Signed A. Tran. My name. My signature. Only, I never signed that. My hands trembled as I held the page. My mother's voice flashed in my mind. "They'll teach you to serve, Aurelia. But don't forget, you were born to be free." She had whispered that as I held her for the last time. Was it him? Richard? Did he alter the record? Did he reduce her meds? To save money? To control the narrative? Was she murdered? My jaw clenched. The sorrow didn't feel like tears. It felt like steel threading into my bones. Back in the OR, I stood over Vivian, scrubbed and ready. The room was silent except for the rhythmic blip of machines. She reached up, her hand brushing the air. I stepped back. Reflex, not compassion. Her eyes fluttered. Her lips moved again. Tell Cairo I'll never regret it. I didn't respond. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I pressed the clamp tighter. Not on her, but on myself. On my fury. My betrayal. I finished the procedure like a ghost piloting a body. Every move was exact, cold, detached. Saving her wasn't kindness. It wasn't mercy. It was the beginning of something much colder. Have you ever had to help someone who betrayed you? Have you ever felt that fire in your chest, begging to burst, and chose silence instead? Duty, I told myself. But it was more than that. It was power. After surgery, I returned to the nurse's station. I pulled up the hallway cameras from the ambulance bay. I watched the footage. They were wheeled in together, Richard and Vivian. On the stretcher, their hands were clasped. Vivian kissed his knuckles. My breath caught. I froze. Not from shock, but from confirmation. They had buried me long enough. I opened my mother's file again. The last page had something scribbled in red ink. A note, tucked under the last dosage entry. Ask Dr. Ward. I turned off the monitor. I didn't go home. I went to war. I woke up 2 days later to the sound of my own breath, measured, deliberate. The kind you count when you've stopped crying but the storm hasn't passed. The room was silent except for the soft click of my laptop as I opened the folder labeled Finale. Evidence. Witnesses. A plan. Dr. Ward had agreed the night before he would verify the tampering on my mother's records. He had looked tired when he said it, like a man finally unburdened. I'll stand by you, he said. And for the first time in days, I believed someone meant it. I opened my mother's notebook. One line underlined in faded red, "The truth doesn't scream, it waits." It echoed in my mind like a warning and a promise. I loaded the USB, hallway footage, hospital logs, Vivian's pregnancy report. All in sequence. Undeniable. I dressed carefully, not to blend in, not to charm. Black. Tailored. Silent power. What would you wear to a dinner where you planned to set the whole table on fire? The Johnson estate was lit like a wedding. Fairy lights lined the hedges. A string quartet played near the pool. Waitstaff in black and white moved like chess pieces. Inside, the air smelled of rosemary and secrets. Glad you made time, dear, Olivia said, cheeks lifted in a tight smile that never reached her eyes. Vivian glided toward me, radiant in a silk gown that did little to hide her pregnancy. We're just so excited, she said, fingers grazing her stomach as if she were proud of what she'd done. I looked at Cairo. He looked away. I gave Dr. Ward a nod. We both knew the timing. The lights dimmed for a video tribute, 40 years of the Johnson legacy. Pictures of weddings, births, boardroom successes filled the screen. Narration by Sterling himself, a baritone soaked in pride. I stood. Before we toast to legacy, I said, I have a video of my own. Laughter flickered, uncertain. Someone whispered, "Is this planned?" The screen shifted. Hallway footage from the ER, Vivian on a stretcher, gripping Cairo's hand. He leaned in, kissed her temple. Freeze frame. The room stilled. Cairo opened his mouth. I raised a hand. Not yet. I stepped forward, held up a paper. Vivian Tran. Pregnant. Conception date, July 4th. I turned to the crowd. Cairo was in Oregon that week. A gasp. Vivian's face drained of color. Have you ever watched someone deny the undeniable? It's not loud. It's desperate. Sterling stood, face red with rage. You shame this family. His palm cracked across Cairo's cheek. The sound echoed. Vivian cried out. It wasn't like that. Which part? I asked. The affair or the cover-up? Aunt Marcia, the one who always wore too much perfume, stepped forward. I knew Cairo couldn't have children. But Olivia made me swear to keep quiet. Gasps turned into murmurs. Cairo looked like a broken puppet. I was supposed to be the heir, he said. I needed a child. You chose a womb over a wife, I whispered. The Johnsons' perfect facade splintered like porcelain hitting tile. I wasn't done. I opened a final envelope. DNA results, I said. This isn't Cairo's baby. Vivian's mouth opened, but no sound came. Sterling stared. Olivia dropped her glass. The red wine bloomed on the carpet like a wound. Flash. A cousin caught the moment with their phone, forever sealed in digital shame. They buried the truth, I said to myself, I just dug it up. Behind me, Olivia staggered. You don't understand, she whispered. You don't know who the father is. The consultation room smelled like old paper and anxiety. I walked in with only two things in my hands, my mother's worn notebook and a sealed envelope. No laptop. No flash drive. Just truths. Detective Nora Bell sat at the head of the table, flanked by legal counsel Alan Pierce. On one side, Sterling Johnson, arms crossed, jaw locked. Olivia sat beside him, gaunt and ghostly. Cairo was silent, eyes dark hollows. Vivian stared at her lap, her belly barely visible now. Dr. Ward stood behind me, silent but resolute. Nora's voice was clipped. We're here under confidentiality for a voluntary statement. I placed the envelope down and pressed play on my phone. Zola's voice filled the room, shaky, hoarse. It wasn't Cairo's. It was Sterling's. And it wasn't the first time. Silence cracked the air. Would you protect a secret, her voice trembled, if it meant destroying your future? Olivia gasped. Sterling exploded from his chair, lunging across the table. His hand grabbed for my phone, but in his frenzy, he slammed into Vivian. She fell with a cry, both hands to her stomach. Nora drew her weapon in a single motion. Step back! Alan Pierce rose, shouting, This is a legal setting. Order! I didn't move. There's another copy, I said, voice flat. Sterling's rage was naked. I did it for the family. For the legacy. You think I wanted this? Olivia crumpled, clutching the edge of the table. All these years I looked away. God help me, I looked away. No one spoke. The walls echoed with years of complicity. Nora pulled out an arrest warrant and read aloud. Sterling's wrists were cuffed. The snap of the metal sounded like closure. Vivian was helped up, but blood stained her dress. The ER team arrived, too soon, or too late. As they wheeled her out, Cairo still hadn't said a word. But Alan reached into his jacket and pulled out a folded note. He handed it to me with shaking fingers. I opened it. I'm sorry. I was weak. I couldn't carry the weight anymore. I never wanted to hurt you. But I did. I hope someday you find peace, even if I never will. I dropped the note and ran. They found him behind the west wing, slumped on the ground, a bottle of sleeping pills half empty. I performed the procedure like I'd done 1,000 times, inserting the forcing fluids, stabilizing the vitals. He opened his eyes just as the sedative wore off. This doesn't mean I forgive you, I said, watching his chest rise and fall. It just means I'm still human. 1 week later, the press room at St. Jude was standing room only. I stood behind the podium, flanked by Dr. Ward and Nora Bell. My name is Aurelia Min Tran. I am a nurse, a daughter, a survivor. Cameras clicked. I stand before you not to destroy, but to reveal. Abuse of power. Manipulated medical records. Silence wrapped in status. I announced the creation of the My Tran Foundation, a name that felt heavier now, but right. For every woman who's been told to stay quiet. For every victim who was made to feel like a threat. I looked at Nora, who nodded once. I ended with my mother's words, justice begins not when we raise our voices, but when we stop whispering. Would you bury your pain? Or would you build something from it? As the room cleared, a young nurse handed me a sealed envelope left at reception. Inside, a single black and white ultrasound photo and a handwritten note. He's still out there. I stared at it for a long time. My hands didn't shake. But my eyes. They held a storm.